Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood. I'm B, your resident person who doesn't know about things.
And I'm your host, Zack, a person that kind of knows about some things, but maybe not so much.
Hey Zack, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Ironically, I read this entire chapter while at a Harry Potter cafe.
Yeah, you're like you betrayed the YA gods or something.
But I was like, the gods need like a sacrifice, and I was like, ooh, look, a croissant.
A sacrifice? Did you just come up with that yourself?
Yes.
Wow.
So this week we read Three Old Ladies Knit a Sock of Death.
A Sock of Death.
What did you think of this chapter, B?
I liked it. I liked that it was explaining some of the... I mean, it didn't explain a lot, really, but it kind of put things into context about how weird the last chapter was, because we talked about how quickly they get into the whole action of everything, and then they kind of deny that anything happened, and then Percy doesn't know what's going on. So this kind of, shows you that his friend Grover and his teacher, Mr. Brunner... So I have some idea about what's going on. I know that the friend is involved. I know that Brunner is probably a centaur. That's basically all that is revealed. Also, they mentioned the Hudson Valley, so I'm 99% sure that Yancey Academy, literally the same area that my college was, which is kind of weird to think about, that I kind of went to Yancey Academy.
I mean, I've never been to the Hudson Valley, so I don't know what it looks like, but it sounds beautiful.
It's really kind of ironic, actually, to look back on it, because when you go there for accepted students day or orientation, it's so beautiful, and you show off to all your friends and family oh, and look at the music venue over here, and we have this crazy concert hall that was designed by something Fisher. He's an architect. It's this crazy, I don't know. Anyway, the campus is amazingly beautiful, but then I think back to all the memories of me being exhausted, hating every book that I've ever read, not wanting to go outside, and it's just kind of funny.
So this kind of sounds like this chapter, which you're summing up.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because they also have really terrible weather, because, I mean, as far as the exposition goes, they're not super subtle. I know that it's called Lightning Thief. I know the weather's been going on. That's weird and not typical to the area, so they're not, being subtle in what it might have to do with Percy and his whole situation, maybe his powers or whatever.
I know in California it's a very foreign concept to have rain, but I thought that was interesting.
I mean, we definitely don't have tornadoes or whatever else they mention in the book.
How does this chapter open up, B? You're kind of the maestro of this episode.
All right, so it opens up where Percy acknowledges that he has the occasional weird experience, which I thought was a very typical tropey kind of description of the chosen one kind of archetype. Oh, all these weird things keep happening and I wonder why. Maybe it's me, which I think is also super common in YA in general, but especially at that time.
Isn't this just Joseph Campbell's the hero's journey type of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I feel it's especially popular in YA for there to be a singular person who's chosen in some way. They always think they're a normal kid. I mean, obviously the Harry Potter formula where it's I'm a what? I'm a wizard? It plays to a certain fantasy that a lot of kids have, I think.
I've been still waiting for my letter to Hogwarts since I was 11. It's gonna come one day.
It got lost. I'm actually literally waiting for a letter from Hogwarts because you send me owl mail. Yeah, I just thought that was funny because we mentioned the first chapter is really reminiscent of that scene where Harry goes to the zoo, is it? Something like that. Yeah, he goes to a place that has snakes and makes the glass disappear. And it's a very similar kind of we went on a trip, but we can't go anywhere with you, you magical boy.
So yeah, then the interesting that happens with this chapter in the beginning is Percy's trying to catch people in the lie, and he's just trying to make Mrs. Dodd references, and who is this person?
At first I thought that maybe Grover was just the only one who was really bad at lying, but I guess it just was revealed that he was one of the few people who actually knew what was going on. I guess except for Mr. Brunner, but he's better at lying because he's an adult, and you have to do it a lot, I guess, when you're an adult.
Even as a teacher, white lies.
Yeah, well, especially if you're a teacher, I feel you have to lie a lot, because a kid will be well, why does suffering happen in the world? And you have to be all right, kid.
Well, if you turn the page, at the end of the book, it just says it's unknown.
My friend is currently working as a science teacher, and the things that she hears kids ask her all day is very hilarious to me. Kids do not hold back in terms of what's on their mind, especially because I feel kids now are probably even more precocious than this takes place in like the 90s, the early 2000s?
Like 2000. Actually, I would imagine it's 2005.
If a book like this took place now, Percy would have already Googled what Half-Blood meant. He would have already found their official website. The internet makes kids so much more aware of things.
I mean, it's still 2005. I mean, Google's is there.
I guess Google is there.
This isn't like Harry Potter where it's the early 90s.
It's supposed to be the 90s. Yeah, that's true. He has no excuse. Do they have like restricted access to the internet or something? I mean, he probably does. It's like a school for delinquents.
Well, remember you'd have to remember back in the day you have to go to a computer lab at school?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I remember computer labs.
I didn't get like a laptop until like I was like 13, 14.
I just remembered a really funny story that my friend Sarah told me about her middle school computer lab class and how the entire time she would just write Star Wars fan fiction.
Bless them.
But it wasn't even like a good fanfic. It was like from the bad prequels, because that's when it was like around that time when that came out.
I have a terrible story about that because I used to write Gears of War fan fiction, and once I wrote one that I thought was so good, I actually sent it into the to the game studio, and they're like, "Hey, you should make a game about this."
Did they say anything? It's almost worse if they said something.
Oh, I have a letter. I have a letter somewhere.
No, they sent you a letter? Did they send like, "Oh, thanks, kid, for taking interest, but this is embarrassing as hell"?
It kind of like that, but it's just like we're not looking for external things at the moment. We're all doing everything in-house.
Wow, that's really funny.
I was just like, oh, I should like frame it. It's somewhere in my house. So one thing I love that happens in this chapter is that Percy accidentally gets expelled again from the school.
Yeah, that was a sad circumstance. He was actually disappointed in himself, I guess. There was part of him that was just like, oh, well, fine, whatever. Anyway, everyone's being weird here. Especially the ending of the chapter with Mr. Brunner being like, oh, no, you don't belong here. You're different. You're whatever word does he say? You're not normal.
Oh, no, you're not normal.
Which is like, okay, you could have said different at least, buddy. Like, he doesn't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was really heartbreaking.
I think it's funny. It's like finally when our English teacher, Mr. Nicole, asked me for the millionth time why I was too lazy to study for the spelling test, I snapped at him and called him an old sot. I wasn't even sure what that meant, but it sounded good.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very 12-year-old thing to do, is to just say something that you heard on TV.
I feel like he was like watching like Monty Python or something. That's a very like...
Yeah, he must have been watching something British. Like also, isn't it old sod, not old sod? I don't know.
It could be either or, but I mean, technically it's in Harry Potter, so he could have been reading Harry Potter.
Oh god, that's so meta.
Oh, no.
He's like, wait, this boy, he's like me. He even has lightning on his forehead.
Oh, stop. I didn't even put those two together. I'm leaving town.
Right? I bet that's... Speaking of fanfiction, I bet you anything someone's made that connection. Oh, I bet there's fanfiction that ships Percy and Harry.
Oh, it's probably happened.
Like, do you know how likely that is? Like, that's so likely it's upsetting.
That's not even likely. That is, like, a thing.
That's probably so popular that there's a whole tag about it on Tumblr. Oh, God.
We'll get our top men to look at this. We just have, like, a bunch of scientists.
Are you our top men? Because I'm not doing that to myself by going on that tag.
We're handling it with our top men, and there's just, like, the warehouse in Indiana Jones, and it's just all filled with Harry Potter X Percy fanfiction.
And they just slide out, like, an old, dusty crate and open it up, and it just says, Potter X Jackson.
This is lot number 85,000.
Oh, God.
It just keeps going. It's a whole warehouse. So, the school year's going around, and good old Percy is doing what all precocious 12-year-olds do and fail miserably at school. The one thing that Percy's super frustrated about is with his dyslexia is...
You couldn't have even planned that.
He has a hard time. Like, the only class he's actually studying for is actually Mr. Brunner's Latin class, and even then he's having a hard time. And I like the description they gave for basically dyslexia. The evening before my final, I got so frustrated I threw the Cambridge Guide to Greek Mythology across my dorm room. The words had started swimming off the page, circling my head, the letters doing 180s as if they were riding skateboards. They were no way I was going to remember the difference between creon and carrion, and polydis and polythesis. And conjoining those Latin verbs, forget it. It just sums up both dyslexia and how wackadoo mythology is at times, like people sounding the same.
This just goes to show how terrible the school is, though, because, I don't know, it doesn't sound like his books are in a font that helps people with dyslexia. And I feel like that would definitely be, like, an accommodation that he would have. But yeah, it just felt kind of really unfair to him that he had just gone through like this crazy, surreal kind of traumatic experience at the museum, and then now he's like forced to read these books that are just like this tiny text of words that look almost exactly the same. Like,
I think that Percy is that he's kind of like, I'm a big boy and I don't, I'm not gonna let my disability or whatever I have, get in the way of that. Even with me, it's like, oh, I'm not gonna take my medication anymore for like the longest time, and like now I'm like, I need it. But back then I was like, I don't need this.
Yeah, I feel like that definitely, especially in the early 2000s, late 90s, there was like a big thing about kids having learning disabilities, and then there was like a whole pushback of people being like, well, in my day, this didn't exist, and kids just were more well-behaved, and everyone's over-medicating their kids. Like, there was like a lot of weird shame around having a learning disability, where I feel like now it's definitely seen as something that, like, everybody has a friend who has difficulty, like, reading or something. I mean, I think back to, like, my dad, who went to, like, a Catholic school in the Bronx in, like, the 60s and 70s, and he obviously had dyslexia. Knowing him, like, he would have difficulty spelling, he would get words kind of flipped around, but it's not like the nuns gave a crap about the fact that he couldn't read. They just would, like, hit him with a ruler and be like, like, for a long time, people didn't really acknowledge these things.
But the one thing that Percy does do, which I really like, is he's like, at least if I'm going to fail, at least I can try to get help from the teacher, something that I would never do in my life.
Did I ever do that? I feel like I
never really asked for help, but, like, I would, like, figure out ways to, like, fiddle and get my grade up somehow with extra credit. But that's what Percy does, and he decides to, like, walk in the middle of the night, because luckily, Mr. Brunner's office hours are...
in the middle of the night?
Like, 9 o'clock at night till midnight.
For children,
Like, it's really weird. Like, I've never been to an all-night where you have to stay over type of school, so, like, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I went to college, but I didn't go to a boarding school, so I don't know how that works for children.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between a boarding school and college.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, also, like, it's not like the professors are still there usually. I mean, some of them, like, live somewhat on campus, but most of them go home because they're like, I'm not staying here.
Except Mr. Brunner is, and as Percy's about to walk and knock into his office, he hears Grover talking.
What I don't understand about this is that why would he be like, all right, gotta let my hair down, now I have hooves? If he thought he heard something outside of the door, and he was suspicious of somebody listening in, would he not, like, turn into a person or whatever he does, or whatever? We'll find out the reason why he's in a wheelchair is because of his hooves.
What half centaur is he?
I mean the half with the hooves. Like, he has hooves, but then the rest of him is people. He's mostly horse, but then he has... also, like, a torso and a head. That is what a centaur is, right? Is there other versions of centaurs where it's, like, just a guy with a horse head?
I mean, I just imagine, like, the person wearing, like, the horse head mask.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was imagining also. I'm glad we're on the same page. I don't think that's a centaur. I just think that that's an abomination against God. Or the gods, I guess.
Well, speaking of abominations against gods, Grover's talking about how, Percy had met a kindly one, and like, what the heck's that? And that Mr. Brunner is like, his imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted, the mist over the students and the staff will be enough to convince him of that. Yeah, so this is definitely another reminiscent of Harry Potter thing, like the sort of, what's the spell in Harry Potter that makes everybody forget? Obliterate,
there we go, yeah. It made me think a lot of that, where it's just like, all right, the muggles can't know anything, so we gotta make them all confused about what happened. We have to do, like, Men in Black them? Yeah, Men in Black them, which is like... I feel like when, like, they do the spell, it's actually, like, you lift your wand up, like, it's like Men in Black, and there's just, like, a flash of light. Yeah, and you, like, press the end. Yeah, exactly. I had a pen that looked like that from Burger King when I was a kid, and it was... my favorite toy. But I also was horrified of it because I was afraid it would accidentally be pointed towards me and that it would work and I would forget things. It's like one of my worst fears ever, to like have my memories replaced or like to forget large chunks of time. So like the concept of somebody swooping in and like planting false memories is really horrifying to me. I don't know why. Probably Men in Black, if we're being totally honest. Just like the idea that something could happen to you and then you could not feel like it happened to you. What happens next is a little interesting, I find, is that Percy, being 12 years old and not having a quite of a grip on life, he drops his mythology textbook. Everyone's like, what's happening? Mr. Brunner's like kind of freaking out. And Percy like books it into like a classroom. That was just unlocked, I guess? I don't know. After hours? this school isn't very well policed. Like, is no one in the hallway? Like, what time is it? Why was he allowed out of his dorm?
Oh, yes, we're gonna have the night hall monitor.
Well, I mean, like, there's no security guard. Like, this is a school filled with delinquents, literally, like, children who have committed crimes, and you just, like, don't have any sort of, like, safeguard against that, I guess? I don't know.
B, this isn't like Shawshank Redemption here.
I know it's not prison. I mean, they live there, and they're being punished, sort of, for how terrible they've acted. Like, there's a kid who's a kleptomaniac. Why are you leaving doors unlocked? This girl could just walk around and start stealing crap from the classrooms. Like, it just seems unrealistic to me that they wouldn't have somebody keeping watch, I guess.
Or maybe it's kind of like on patrol, like he's just going around the school.
Yeah, they just have, like, one guy, like there always is in movies or whatever, where it's, like, just one really overweight guy with a walkie-talkie. He's like, everything seems clear to me, and then he, like, takes a nap next to the vending machine.
And he's also, like, 3 days to retirement, usually.
Yeah, or he's, like, Paul Blart Mall Cop.
And he's gonna eventually get down to, like, writing, like, his life insurance policy for his wife and kids. The day after retirement, of course.
How tough of a job do you think this is? It's like, he went from New York City cop to security guard at Yancey Academy.
Is this the third movie in the Kinder Cop?
Kinder Cop? You're just like the new portmanteau. Are you a Kinder Cop? First 5-year-old with a NYPD badge. I don't know.
So it's like, I like the imagery we get here, and it's a shadow slid across the lighted glass of Mr. Brunner's door. The shadow was something much taller than my wheelchair-bound teacher, holding something that looked suspiciously like an archer's bow. I opened the nearest door and slipped inside. A few seconds later, I heard a slow clop, 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 like muffled wooden blocks. Then they sound like an animal snuffling right outside my door. A large dark shape paused in front of the glass, then moved on.
That doesn't make sense to me. Why is he sitting in his office as a centaur?
Let me slip into something more comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's like that scene in Adventure Time where the deer, like, takes his hooves off and, like, sort of twiddles his fingers together. It's like the reverse of that. He's like, let me just put on my hooves 1 second. It behooves you to ignore the fact that I have hooves.
I mean, that's kind of like a scary thing. Just imagine, like, this kid that doesn't know anything, and you just hear, like, like animal panting and, like, hoofs. And, like, what's going? Is there a wolf in here again?
I mean, wolves don't clop, though. I think they distinctly do not make a clopping sound. Like, you know that this is some sort of ungulate animal. Like, it could be a camel or a cow or something.
Or it could actually be, like, reverse, like, Horseman. It's actually a horror movie.
Reverse horseman. Wait, the guy with the horse face, you mean? But he wouldn't have hooves then, so it wouldn't be clop. You know? It would just be normal. That's just a horse. A horse with a horse face and a horse feet is just a horse. That's not a horseman. He has horse feet and a horse head, but his middle part is human.
Yeah, like he wears like a business suit or like a mailman outfit.
Oh god, that's horrifying. It's so bad. Literally so distressing to try and picture that.
Yeah, no, and of course, Percy's freaked out about this, and he just, like, waits there for, like, ungodly amount of time. And he's just kind of going over what they said with Grover and Mr. Brunner, because, Grover also brought up, like, there was, like, the winter solstice deadline. Like, what's that have to do with this?
Yeah, something about that.
Yeah. And eventually, Percy gets out, and he goes to see Grover, and Grover's just sitting in his room doing, normal people things, like studying for his Latin test. Nothing suspicious here.
I mean, you obviously know what happened. I mean, when was the last time you read this book?
Maybe like a year or two ago.
I'm trying to, like, figure out how Grover would be involved in all of this, because it just feels a little weird that, like, it kind of makes sense that Brunner would be, like, this guy who's supposed to be close to Percy to kind of keep an eye on him and see what's going on with, like, his whole half-blood demigod situation. But it feels kind of weird that they would also have, like, a kid who is along to kind of keep an eye on him, I guess, but maybe, I don't know, because he's his best friend, that he has a better eye on the situation. I don't know.
B, do you hear that?
Yeah, what?
I'm hearing people, like, yelling at their podcast machines, screaming what he is.
Yeah.
What's happening.
What he is. Yeah. I mean, see, I don't know things. This is my job on the show.
What do you think it could be?
He's probably in a similar situation to Percy, I would imagine. Like, they're both demigods or whatever, half-bloods. It's one thing to, like, assign a kid a teacher, right? Like, Mr. Brunner was assigned to be his teacher, so it's easy to, like, sort of place him in Percy's life. It's kind of weird how, like, Grover ended up being Percy's best friend. Like, did they facilitate that in any way? Like, I'm trying to think about how you would sort of orchestrate a kid to be best friends with someone. Do you know what I mean? I, like, have a feeling there's, like, some sort of powers that be that, like, placed them where they are to, like, be closer to Percy. So I'm just trying to, like, figure out how that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
I think Percy's more not attracted, but he's like he's attracted to more people that are kind of similar to him, and they're kind of, you know.
I guess that makes sense.
You would imagine if Grover started, like, trying to talk to him, because Percy probably has a hard time making friends, so it's probably not that hard for Percy.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Like, anybody who would be nice to you in that kind of circumstance where everybody's kind of a crappy, mean bully.
Yeah, but then, okay, speaking of weird, mean bullies, it cuts to the next day, and Mr. Brunner has just finished the 3-hour-long Latin exam, which I've never had to take a 3-hour-long test before in my life.
No, me neither.
I was like, you usually get 3 hours to do it, but I finished like an hour and a half. The interesting thing that happens, though, is like Percy's about to leave, and Mr. Brunner's like, Percy, come over here in front of the whole class. Well, Percy, it's okay that you're leaving Yancey. We'll not miss you guys. Wait, that's not the right word to use. Percy, you're not normal. It's like in front of the whole class. Like, at least say it like...
No wonder he's a centaur, because he has a horse's... I can't say it. Like, what the heck? Why would you do that to a kid? Like, wait until... Like, is he never going to see him again after this test? Like, just come up after, like, the test when everybody's done. Like, I don't know. It just seemed really weird and tactless that he said that.
Just, like, imagine, like, a teacher doing that to a student is something that I think is unfathomable, because it's like you're there to teach children, not insult them in front of other kids.
Yeah, it's totally crazy that he would do that. Like, every time I've ever had a conversation with a teacher that was even vaguely serious, they've always been like, okay, let's step out into the hall or whatever. And that's, like, seen as, like, a typical thing to do, especially probably in this school that's literally filled with juvenile delinquents. Like, I'm sure kids have discussions with teachers out in the hallway all the time. So, like, for him to be like, all right, well, I'm going to sit here in front of the whole class and I'm going to really blow up your spot, it just... like, seems really strange.
I mean, he also has office hours, so...
Maybe he has a horse's brain, too, you know?
Yeah, and then Percy just storms out as, you know, he should have. And then this is where, like, the story starts to get a little sad. And, like, he's, like, talking to kids his own age, and they're talking about, like, where they're going. Like, I like the pastors they have. One of them was going out to a hiking trip to Switzerland. Another was cruising the Caribbean for a month. And they were juvenile delinquents like me. But they were rich juvenile delinquents. Their daddies were executives and ambassadors for celebrities. I'm a nobody from a family of nobodies.
Yeah, that was sad.
But I'm like, oh my god, it just like rich people doing rich things.
I mean, like, that kind of reminded me a little bit of the college I went to, because there were, like, obviously normal people who went there, but it's, like, kind of an expensive school, and there were a lot of, like, kind of trust fundy people sometimes that you would run into, and, like, you'd forget that they were that way because they would dress very, like, hipster with their, like, ripped jeans and whatever. Like, they kind of, like, performed this idea of looking not so rich, but then you would hear them be like, oh yes, well, growing up I had an au pair and a nanny, and they taught me, and I went to Waldorf school, and it's like, what are you talking about?
What's your name? Oh, it's Chaz MasterCard.
Chaz MasterCard. Exactly. I mean, like, not even, like, that kind of rich, but it's very strange to be near rich people.
Yeah, no, for me, it was... So I actually went to a school where we lived right next to one of the movie studios. I'll just give a point, I lived in Burbank, so a lot of the kids there, their dads or their moms, you know, worked as either executives, actors, directors, and all that stuff, so it was really, really weird.
I mean, also, there's, like, a couple celebrities who went to my college, which is super weird. Like, celebrities' kids, and they'd always be like, oh, you know, I'm gonna totally, like, blow up what school I went. Whatever, I don't go there anymore. Like, Kurt Cobain's daughter went there for a while, and everyone was freaking out, and then I feel like another person's daughter went there. I don't know. So
Percy's packing up, he shoves all his clothes in the suitcase. Actually, I feel like he has, like a hobo bindle.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would imagine as well.
Like, he's got, like, a little hobo bindle, and, of course... Like, I think this is like a trope for most kids. He gets on the Greyhound bus.
Yeah, okay, this is actually really hilarious that they mention a Greyhound bus and how it breaks down, because literally yesterday I get a message from my best friend and she goes, yeah, I was on a Greyhound bus and it caught fire and we had to get off the bus.
I saw that photo and I was just thinking, wait, aren't we recording next tomorrow?
A literal Greyhound bus breaks down. Like, they're so known for breaking down that they're in this fictional book. Like, I went on their, like, help Twitter to see other responses that they gave to people, and it was literally just them being like, sorry for the delay, really sorry about that. Just like this poor intern that they hired to apologize to people all the time, and it's just like...
They're like, I wish I could have took that ad for, like, Wendy's or, like, Arby's and do, like, the marketing and stuff. I mean, it's actually a trope because this has happened in more than one book that I've read where a Greyhound bus breaks down.
A Greyhound bus breaks down. I feel like they just break down. I feel like they just don't, like, they're murder mobiles out on the road. Like,
oh no, so they're not Greyhounds. You're telling us they're like hellhounds.
Yeah, they literally, like, my friend messaged me about the whole circumstance about, like, why it caught on fire, and it was like some crazy stuff. The axle was, like, misaligned, so the tire was scraping up against the top of the bus, so like it stripped the rubber, like it got too hot and then it stripped off, and then the metal against the metal like caused a spark which ignited like all of like the fluid and like very flammable things inside of a bus. And that's not how buses work. Your one job is to have a bus that work. It was just, yeah, I couldn't believe that. And then they were like, here's a voucher for a burger.
See, I mean, luckily your best friend was okay. That's the moral of this.
Yeah, oh my god, I was so relieved, like, because she sends us that picture of, like, a bus ensconced in flames. And then I was like, what was happening? I was, like, really disoriented. I just, like, woke up from a nap, and then I, like, look at these messages, and I'm like, what? There was a fire? And then, like, of course, because people are dumb, there were passengers who were so angry about I guess it's not even an accident, about the exploding bus, that they opened the cargo compartment and started taking their cargo out while the bus was on fire to save it. You can get another duffel bag. Like, it's not worth it. You're gonna die. That's like the first thing they tell you when you're learning like fire safety is like, leave your things behind.
So the interesting thing about, this Greyhound bus is that Grover's coming along too.
On the murder mobile. Jeez. He's just there to make sure the bus doesn't explode.
Yeah, that's exactly why he's there. And guess what? Lo and behold, the bus breaks down. This is a book of fantasy, so this is the most fantasy thing if a Greyhound bus doesn't not break down.
The fact that it didn't just completely burst into flames is the fact that it's a fantasy. It just broke down. No casualties.
So while they're doing that, Grover's trying to like talk to person like, hey, if you ever need anything, he like hands him like a business card. Do you have the business card? Do you want to read the business card?
Grover Underwood, Keeper, Half-Blood Hill, Long Island, New York, 800-009-0009, which I feel like that's a real number, probably.
I'm afraid to like call that because I've called numbers before for old like VHS copies, and I've gotten. I'll put it in the nicest way, kid-friendly possible. I'd have to like $3 a minute.
Well, I mean, honestly, that they make a reference to that in Rocko's Modern Life, so we're not going too offensive here.
No, but I'm just saying it's just really funny when like that pops up, and some of them are for like kids VHSs.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that number looks like the number to like a mattress supply store or something. You know what I mean? Like 800-009.
Here, let's call it.
No, let's not. Are you serious? Are you gonna call it? Because I'm not gonna call it because I don't want to be put on a list. I get enough robocalls as it is.
1-800-009-0009.
If this is actually a Percy Jackson number, I'm gonna flip.
Wireless. The number you dialed has been changed, disconnected, or is no longer in service. If you
Let me try one more time. I think I forgot to.
Are you gonna not dial the one?
I forgot to dial the one. Here, I'm doing it right now. I'm gonna call. So 1-800-009-0009.
Oh God.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The number you dialed has been.
All right. So Grover's dead.
Oh no! I feel like back in the day it was like Rick Riordan, like making like a '90s rap or something.
My name is Rick, and I'm here to say.
Oh God! Good old Percy is like, what? Half-Blood what? And Grover's like, don't say that name.
Yeah, they're really bad at hiding things. I mean, I guess it kind of explains some of the questions I had that it says keeper, but like not really.
So they get off the bus because it literally, its smoke has filled up the cabin, so it's almost like peak explosion time.
Peak explosion time. I can't even joke about that. Like, I was literally horrified my friend would die, and now I'm just like laughing about how bad greyhounds are.
You gotta laugh at misery sometimes.
Yeah, that's kind of my life philosophy.
They look across the street, and there's like these 3 old ladies in like a fruit stand.
Yeah, murder ladies.
There were no customers, just 3 ladies sitting in a rocking chair in the shape of a maple tree, knitting the biggest sock I've ever seen. I mean, these socks were the size of sweaters, but they were clearly socks. The ladies on the right knitted one of them, the lady on the left knitted another, and the lady in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn.
The most threatening knitting I've ever seen committed to text.
Well, I mean, it's scary because Grover's freaking out, and Percy's like, they're looking at me. And then the old ladies look at Percy, and they like snip the yarn, and Percy's like, I don't get it, but I can still hear like the snip from across a freeway.
Yeah, old people are kind of scary, which I feel bad for saying, but it's true. I feel like it's easy to make old people kind of scary. They remind us of our mortality. It's really sad, but it's true.
Man, speaking of happier things...
Speaking of happier things, what?
The bus starts. The Greyhound bus man's like, heck yeah, I'm the best.
Yeah, also, like, I don't really even understand how he fixed the bus. He pulls a metal thing out of the engine. I feel like you shouldn't be taking things out of the engine to fix it. Like, where did that come from?
I feel like what he did is he put, like, his rotisserie chicken in the engine to heat it up, because you can actually do that.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of people doing that. That's crazy, but...
So it's like, oh, I had that on my drive shaft, so... Everyone wants some free chicken?
Yeah, some nice salmonella danger zone chicken.
And all that Grover's thinking about is, why is it the 6th grade? It's always the 6th grade for these kids.
Which is incredibly threatening as a line, for sure. It's like, all right, well, this is around the time that they usually kick the bucket, isn't it? Or something. Something like that.
And the chapter ends with them getting back on the bus, and Grover is like looking at Percy as if like he's going to pick out some flowers. General thoughts on this chapter?
I really liked it. It got me really excited for the rest of the book. Like, it's almost hard for me to just read a chapter at a time, but I'm pacing myself also because I don't have a physical copy of the book yet. Yeah, I really liked it. I liked that they explained some of the questions that were raised in the first chapter without, like, totally explaining everything. Like, they're stringing you along just enough. Like, I think children's books can either be too simplistic, like, oh, they raise a question, then they immediately answer it, or...
You hear some exposition, then you never hear from it
Yeah,
again.
like, I feel like Lemony Snicket is guilty of this just a little bit, where it's like, you feel like there's something else going on than what you're seeing on the page, but it takes forever to get there. Like, you're like, what? There's something special going on. Like, they're connected to, like, this larger conspiracy of things going on, but I don't know what it is. It's a hard balance to strike with kids' books, where, especially because they're not particularly long books, and you just need to, like, find the pacing right, where it's like you reveal just enough information that it doesn't feel like you're just kind of biding time until like the cool thing is revealed, but also like if you reveal the cool thing too soon, then it's kind of like anticlimactic and you're like, okay, I don't really care about this.
Yeah, no, I really like this chapter. There's a lot of good world building here. I thought, you get to see more about Percy, you get to see more about Mr. Brunner and Grover, and you really, like, you get a sense of, like, there's more to this world than just, sword and sorcery type of stuff.
Yeah, it was really exciting. Some parts didn't totally make sense to me, like the fact that Brunner just likes to chill out as a centaur in his office and like whatever. Like there's a few things that don't totally track with me, but I know that a lot of the other stuff that I don't understand is obviously just me not knowing what happens, which is a good thing. It gets me excited to read the next chapter and see what's going on. I know that, like you said, a lot of people are like screaming at their phones or whatever about how I don't know anything and that I'm crazy for not understanding what's going on.
You are our sayer. What do you think is going to happen next chapter?
What's going to happen? Probably Percy's going to squeeze more information out of Grover on the bus ride, because I mean that's where they left off, right? They're on the bus still. So that provides like a really good setting for a lot of explanation, because there's really nothing else you can do on a bus other than talk. I feel like he's maybe going to reveal something important. Maybe not everything about what's going on with Percy. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're gonna totally get into it in the third chapter. I don't know. I don't think that Percy's gonna probably find out exactly what's going on with him in the next chapter.
Well, I can't wait to read the next chapter next week.
Yeah, I know. Or I could read it now.
So we actually have a listener question, or I like to call it Iris messages. So this is from a actually listener of my show, Lillian. Hey, y'all. We all know Percy Jackson's awesome, but do you guys have any other books recommendations that are also steeped in Greek mythology?
Greek mythology. Oof.
I would say I don't know. This is super generic, but just read the Odyssey.
I don't know. Like, I took a classics class.
They just did a new translation of it about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's really good.
Yeah, I feel like my partner is probably, like, wringing their hands. Like, just they know that I don't know anything about classics. Yeah, they were almost a classics major, so I feel like I'm out of my element. I can't really think of anything that has mythology in it. I mean, like, I loved the Hercules movie when I was a kid, I guess. I can't really think of anything.
One Greek mythology thing that I remember is, like, there was this series of videos on VHS where it was, like, this Jack Russell Terrier, and they did a bunch of Greek mythology, so they did the one about...
are you talking about Wishbone?
I think so.
Yeah, we talked about Wishbone on The Unfortunate Associate. It's actually like a deleted clip from the show, but we talked about Wishbone and Tyler put it on Patreon. Yeah, I love that show. That was a great show.
Yeah, I remember then. There's like episodes they did about Greek mythology.
Yeah, I mean, he was a literary dog. That's like everything I could ask for. I want a literary dog.
Nerdy thing, I actually read to my dog every night. We're actually almost finished with Goblet of Fire.
That's so cute. I feel like I want to read to my hedgehog now.
You should read Series of Fortune Events, get them in the mood.
You're a part of this family now. You need to know about Lemony Snicket. He's still a baby, though. He doesn't understand things.
He doesn't understand the concept of loss, misery, and death.
Yes, but when he gets older, I'm sure that my hedgehog will understand human words.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're like, yes, when he's older. And then, like, you crack out, like Kafka or, like, Moby Dick.
or Beatrix Potter. Because she has a hedgehog character, and he would relate to it. He'd see its representation.
So, B, where can they find you?
You can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com, and you can find me on Twitter at B. Kelly Gorman.
So, if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, it's at halfblood_radio. We're getting some people, and that's really spooky fun. If you want to email our show and send us messages, if you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphhalfblood@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd read them on the show. If you actually want to send in audio clips, we'd love to play them at the end of the show, and we can still answer them. And that would be a lot of fun. Just do that on your phone, and just email it to us. You can find us in any podcasting place as soon as this pops up. Stitcher, Podbean, I don't know why, SoundCloud, iTunes, and all those wonderful places.
All the places.
Yes, and if you want to leave us a wonderful review, we'd really appreciate it. I mean, we could always have a gimmick about it, like, here, give us a review that's you written in English, translated it into Latin, then retranslate it back into English.
Yes, actually do that. That's really great.
So if you want to do that, we'd really appreciate it. Well, I think that's the episode. I'm Zach.
I'm B.
Stay mortal. Bye.